Well, thank you for being here today. I'm excited. We have a great event today with Chris Bennett and Greg Frost. My name is Kevin Kelling. I work with North Point Bank, and I have the privilege to be the chairman of the State Education Committee for the MMLA. We are excited about this. I get a chance to work with Audrey Acquisti and others that are on the committee. If you're on the Education Committee, would you stand up, please? Great. Thank you. We have a great committee. You're welcome to join us. There are other great committees with the MMLA, so thank you very much. I want to say thank you to each of the vendors who are here today, who have a booth out there. They helped put this event on. And you should have gotten this when you came in this morning. What you want to do is you want to get the vendors to sign this, and then you'll be put into a drawing at the end of the event for some cool prizes. So I would encourage you to do that. We're going to take a break after Chris speaks, and you'll have more time to do that. The more signatures, the more likely you will win. So I encourage you to do that. I couldn't think of a more appropriate topic of how to get more business or more sales in a purchase market, because that's what we're in, and we're going to be in that for a long time. And I look forward to hearing what Greg has to share this morning. And where is that market headed? Well, that's what Chris Bennett's going to help us with. Let me tell you a little bit about Chris. Chris is the CEO of Vice Capital Markets, which is one of the 5 largest hedge advisory firms in the country, and happens to be based right here in Novi. Chris founded Vice Capital in 2001, and they provide position reporting, analytics, and trading services to banks and mortgage companies all across the country, trading $45 billion in mortgage and mortgage-backed securities last year alone. Now, you may not have known this, but Chris is known for his annual economics talks before this group, and they're known for their bluntness and occasionally colorful language, along with a strange preference for using flip charts and magic markers for his presentation. Here's Chris.
Hi, everybody. Dave Sullivan here for the MMLA Membership Committee with
Chris Bennett here from Vice Capital Markets.
Chris. Thanks again for doing the speech again this year. Entertaining as always. But you talked a little bit about the ratio, the debt, and how it was in relation to the GDP. It really was not as, maybe devastating as some people might feel. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the ththings that we try to take a look at in terms of perspective is that historically we've always run about a 35% debt to GDP ratio. So, of course, if you've got a $10 trillion GDP, you're talking about $3.5 trillion in debt there. And all countries have debt. It's very important. It's how you have a good functioning treasury market, and you can use it to help smooth out all those peaks and valleys in the economy. So for us to go from 35% debt to GDP ratio to now 73%, it's a very large, dramatic increase, but it's now leveled off where our current deficit now, about $500 billion a year, is about 3% of our GDP. So given that we have inflation that should, on average, in the long-term average 2 to 3%, that's not really worsening our debt to GDP ratio. And the fact that we spent all that money, which worsened it in the first place, has helped prop up the economy and bring tax revenues up to where we need them to be.
Great. I think that's a very positive message. It's something that, concerns me quite a bit is the level of debt. But when you think about it the way you've explained it, I think it's not as daunting as some people feel.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a real boogeyman, especially when you have things happen with Greece and that have happened with other countries. People are very scared about it, or they look at it from the perspective, an analogy, which is a very bad analogy a lot of people use, is, well, you can't run your household like that. Well, you could if you paid all your children with little handwritten slips of paper that you gave them.
Yeah.
Could you ever run out of slips of paper?
Right.
No, you would just simply write more of them.
Yeah.
And now, in the long run, there are natural limits. You don't want this to spiral out of control. It never has to be paid off, but it does have to continue to be turned over and to be financed. And what happens is, if your taxes aren't enough, if you're not collecting enough taxes to pay, quote unquote, which you don't have to pay for, but to cover the government spending, essentially you're changing it from a tax on the income of people to a tax on wealth that's denominated in your currency. That's what Greece and those countries used to do a long time ago before the euro, when they always spent more than they took in. They essentially converted a tax on incomes to a tax on wealth denominated in that currency by running up deficits and depreciating their currency. So there's a limit, but during times of economic constraint, that's when you want to push the pedal to get growth going back up, because in the end, that's what's going to help shrink your deficits or to get that tax base back up.
Right. So right now, everybody pretty much expects interest rates to go up about 1% in a year. Would you say that in the next year that's going to happen, or?
Yeah, it's, you know, what's tough is I'm really confident about the direction, but the timing is very, very difficult. You know, I thought for a period of a couple years that this party was going to be over and interest rates were going to go up. But so many of those things are dependent on not just what's happening in the global economy, but those things kind of fuel itself. Back in mid-May of last year, the market woke up to the fact that $1.40 on a 10-year yield when we're trying to get inflation at 2% and a negative 60 basis point yield is insane. Oh my God, what are we doing? And everybody runs screaming for the exits. And you know, it obviously gets ahead of itself and then it comes back a little bit. But there's going to be a series of those moments, and it's not really possible to say, well, this should happen at this time, or interest rates will go up a quarter every quarter, because they usually don't go up in this nice, smooth fashion. It usually involves a firestorm. It's really the opposite effect that we see in the stock market, where when the stock market goes up, it goes up very slowly, very methodically, and it's interrupted by a series of very sharp dips. Because everybody usually is on, in the stock market's example, everybody's on one side of the trade.
Sure. Okay, well, very good, Chris. We appreciate that. Thanks
David,
for coming.
thank you so much.